Hello. Thank you for joining us for our COVID Diagnostic Heroes segment. This is a special segment that we're sharing with you the stories of some of our members. This past year and a half, the pandemic has been life-changing for many of us. And what we often don't hear of or see are the heroes that are behind the scenes. They're making the diagnostics, they're developing them, they're regulating them so that we have access to safe, accurate diagnostic tests as we move through this pandemic. So now I'm going to turn it over to some of our volunteers, and they're going to share their stories of our COVID diagnostic heroes that are working for us every day. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Sarahbrenner. I'm a preventive medicine and public health physician serving as the Chief Medical Officer for in vitro diagnostics at the FDA. And the pandemic experience from a public health agency's perspective and as a public health physician has been really extraordinary. We're about a year and a half into it now, and it just keeps coming, the challenges and the opportunities. And we've really been through a lot together over the last year and a half, inside the agency, across the interagency, across the federal government, and in collaboration with stakeholders far and wide, states, industry, private sector, nonprofits, you name it. Everyone has come together in ways that I think are previously unimagined. Public-private partnerships have been a part of what I've been doing as part of my role in public service for quite a while, for many years, but this is truly something that we've never experienced before. I'll go back and talk a little bit about what it's been like from within the FDA, from within the Department of Health and Human Services, where I've concurrently served, and just as a mom and as a wife and as a human who's also experiencing the pandemic in a personal way. It's been a roller coaster, full tilt, as they say, all the way across. I think we really jumped in from the FDA world back in January 2020, maybe even a little bit before that, when it became obvious that there was something happening in the world that was going to change the dynamic of public health and the dynamic of regulation for medical products for quite some time. And when I look back at 2020 and early in the year, one of the things that we identified in vitro diagnostics right away, having to do with the data that diagnostic devices produce, is that there would be an urgent need to gather diagnostic data and in a way that's harmonized and standardized and as close to real time as possible so that we could provide analytics for the national response, for FDA's review teams, and to keep an eye on what's happening surveillance-wise with regards to the spread of the disease in the United States. So very early on, one of the first things we jumped into doing, in addition to gearing up for the review process and review of in vitro diagnostics for COVID-19, which all come through our office at CDRH, we started thinking about, with partners in MDIC and through a previous initiative called SHIELD, how could we provide standards for interoperability and data gathering mechanisms for the community for COVID-19 diagnostics that had not yet hit the market. One of my colleagues has been working in this space for a long time, and his name was Mike Waters. So Mike and I really immediately kind of took off out of the gates and decided we need to wrangle some community members and some stakeholders here and work closely with other partners like CDC to develop data standards around what these diagnostics will gather and produce and where that will go. So that was one of the first things that we started doing. We had no idea how big it would get. We had no idea how important it would be in the grand scheme of things. But shortly thereafter, the CARES Act was passed in Congress, and it actually carved out a lane for diagnostic data capture and reporting. So we worked to help inform the Department of Health and Human Services, or HHS's, data standards around the capture of diagnostic data, including where it would flow to, how it would be analyzed, how it would be used to guide the national pandemic response. About that time, COVID-19 EUA applications started pouring into the office as well, first molecular tests and later on in the year antigen tests. But at this point in early 2020 and then moving into the summer, we were really trying to jockey and get ahead of what we knew would be a deluge of diagnostic data. We wanted it to be as accessible, as easy to use, and as we wanted it to be able to be quickly used by all stakeholders at this federal level. So by the year, we had actually helped to inform the Secretary's guidance around diagnostic data capture. We'd worked with CDC and other stakeholders, key players in the field across the whole United States, to define what the implementation specifications would be for laboratory captured and non-laboratory captured diagnostic data. And we'd started working closely with federal partners on the infrastructure and states on the infrastructure for capturing and rolling up diagnostic data to inform the national pandemic response. About that time, I also concurrently started serving formally as the diagnostic data lead for the data strategy and execution work group at HHS. And so that's a cell which is still going, even through the transition and to this day, of interagency subject matter experts and thought leaders who inform the pandemic response by serving as sort of the data control tower for all COVID diagnostic data and other types of data. So by sort of the middle of the year or the end of the year in 2020, Mike had also detailed to my team along with other interagency detailees. And we had another person join named Mary Jung, who was fantastic. And she's also from CDRH in an office called OSEA, the Office of Clinical Evidence and Analysis. So I had an interagency team that included two key players from CDRH, from the analytics side, from the diagnostic side, and then we championed between all of us sort of the analytical methods, the implementation strategies, and also different policy strategies. And reporting up into the White House, it was really, it was really full on. There were just so many things happening so quickly, major decisions that needed to be made, and a lot of data was needed in real time in order to inform how we were approaching the pandemic, different changes in strategy. Also, states were relying on us with regards to state level data and helping to interpret that. And also supply chain and control tower for diagnostics were also relying on different pieces of COVID diagnostic data. So there's a lot going on there. We were running in a million different directions, really 24/7. And of course, still wearing our hats at FDA. So that was an exciting time. It was also a really challenging time. At that point, nobody really knew what was going to happen next, and we still don't. The pandemic keeps surprising us. But I would say the summer into the fall was really the thick of the pressure, the intensity, and also just the volume of work. By fall, we had started to envision some different initiatives that not only looked at the technical implementation pieces and the policy pieces, but also started thinking about how can we spur innovation in diagnostics, and particularly around not just the devices and the analytical performance characteristics of them, but how could we sort of fill a void that has been created when diagnostics were taken outside of labs and used at points of care or used in over-the-counter settings in people's homes, places where diagnostics aren't typically or haven't traditionally been used. That created a gap with regards to how the information or the diagnostic data would get from the device to public health authorities, to clinicians, back to the FDA for post-market surveillance. So this was an area that was rapidly changing and an opportunity to innovate, particularly in digital health, and integrate new types of technological solutions with IVDs. So by fall, we'd started envisioning how can we do some technology sprints and kind of really encourage people to think about how can we meet the needs, not only the clinical needs and the local needs, but also the national data needs and the public health and surveillance needs that are best served by real-time diagnostic data that's harmonized and aggregated in an analyzable way. Unfortunately, last fall, we also experienced a major loss, and a lot of people have experienced major losses throughout the pandemic. We lost Mike Waters in the fall of 2020. Extraordinarily tragic, and really, I'd like the world and the community to know that we wouldn't be nearly where we are with regards to some of the innovations and some of the breakthroughs we've had in diagnostic data harmonization and interoperability, particularly around COVID, without Mike's genius. We've tried to do many things to honor him since his loss. One of the last projects that he was working on, really up until the day that he passed away, had to do with diagnostic innovation. And with HHS, the Office of the Chief Information Officer, and OASH, the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health, FDA worked to launch a COVID-19 at Anywhere Diagnostics Design-a-thon. And that was initially intended to be a 2-week sprint. It went quite a bit longer than that because there was so much interest. Over 700 participants and over 30 technology teams entered the competition. And the goal there, we really had 2 goals. One was to bring digital solutions and data capture and transmission capabilities to the in vitro diagnostic device platform and couple those as part of the diagnostic workflow. In that way, what we envisioned were diagnostics that could automate data capture and reporting functions to alleviate the burden on users. So we had some amazing technological innovations that the 30+ technology teams brought into the competition there. The second component was actually to build or to begin building an information superhighway from untethered COVID-19 diagnostics, so those used at points of care and untraditional sites and over the counter or at homes or other places now. We needed a way for that information, which was going to start flowing in high volume in real time wirelessly, to get to public health authorities. And so we focused on getting the data into HHS Protect, which is the federal government's repository for COVID data. We built an interface with a government contractor called Wireless Automated Transmission for Electronic Reporting Systems, or WATRS. So we named that after Mike. And that interface allowed data standard integration and implementation at the device level, and then seamless or frictionless data transfer into HHS Protect. So that interface is still being optimized and being built. We've onboarded several commercial IVD manufacturers and their middleware partners and players in the data ecosystem to WATRS. So we already have live patient data flowing into Protect from over-the-counter diagnostics right now. So those were a couple of major, sorts of new things that we were doing that were exciting in the fall of 2020. Because we had so much interest in the Diagnostics Design-a-thon, we actually decided to roll that into a second innovation opportunity called the Opportunity Project. So TOP-X is how we refer to it, a program that's run through the Census Bureau and in collaboration with HHS and FDA again. So in January 21, running for about 8 or 10 weeks, we ran the Top Technology Sprint. So there were additional partners from industry, additional partners from the public sector and the private sector and nonprofits and the general public who were able to jump into the TOP-X technology sprint, which furthered the development of the goals that I previously mentioned. Another important thing that's taken off during this year for the last several months is further build out of what will become the future data reporting stream data flows for public health purposes. So under the new administration, we've shifted to some degree from dealing with what we did last year, which was a lot of tyranny of the urgent, big pushes out into the medical countermeasure spaces through Operation Warp Speed, maintaining the progress that's been made and looking at how we build towards the future, how we prepare for the next pandemic, essentially. And so, when I think about that and what we've done over the last several months, one piece that I just mentioned is building future pipelines and a public health IT infrastructure that's truly 21st century and beyond. So public health, as most people know, has been chronically underfunded and understaffed and under everything really for decades. this pandemic has put a spotlight on how important and essential public health infrastructure truly is. And in this stage, of technology development, especially as diagnostics become untethered from conventional places of use like laboratories and clinical sites, we really need an infrastructure that's going to serve public health needs, clinical needs, and get us into a future place that's much better than this one. Help us prepare, hopefully not, but potentially for the next pandemic. So I work with colleagues across the interagency, colleagues at FDA, to help build these types of platforms, the public health initiatives of the future, essentially. The diagnostics data platform or informatics platform is a very important piece of it. It's one that is sort of behind the radar or under the radar for the majority of Americans. You don't think so much about where the information goes or how it's used, but it's absolutely critical to inform evidence-based public health decision-making, evidence-based policy making, really having the data flow from diagnostics and have it usable for public health authorities at the federal, state, and local levels is an absolutely essential part of what has been happening and what needs to happen in the future. As I look forward to what happens next, over the spring and the summer and looking towards the end of the year, my hope is that the technological innovations that have started, that have really taken off in a way that otherwise would have maybe taken years, even decades, to sort of get out of the gates, that those can be harnessed and we can push forward. Push forward not just from the private sector side, but also from the government side. How can we help to support an ecosystem and innovation that will help patients ultimately and help public health, help populations at a time? Also from a regulatory perspective, we've really handled volumes. We've thought creatively, we've thought outside the box, we've created new pathways, new templates, new processes, really an evolution of enormous proportion, I think, in a very short period of time, that I think will really serve everyone moving forward. That's been an exciting thing to be part of at FDA. And I've talked mostly about the nuts and bolts and some of the technical pieces that we've worked on, but I would like to also comment on the people side. And I think that if I look back over the last year and a half, it's certainly been exciting to be a part of doing things that are new, but it's also been really exciting to meet people who are new. And one of the silver linings, I think, for a lot of us has been twofold, has been getting to work with people that we otherwise probably would have never met, joining with them and sharing the passion of public service across agencies and across sectors and between the federal and state governments. Those things have been very, very rewarding. Those relationships have been built in ways that will last a lifetime, probably, well beyond the pandemic, and more deeply formed in terms of the foundation of how well we know each other. It's funny because it seems like we've been apart a lot, but in reality, working through the pandemic in this sort of virtual 24/7 reality has allowed us to know each other a lot better, I think in a lot more real ways. So what's funny about being apart and together throughout the pandemic is that, the colleagues that I work with are literally coast to coast, like across the United States. And you get to see them, us, doing our jobs in the middle of the day, in the middle of the night, with kids, with pets, with, people working in offices at home or in closets or wherever they can find a quiet place. And so it's just been like trench warfare almost with people working on the pandemic over this period of time. It's been exciting and rewarding and tragic and everything all rolled up into one. I think that, the other thing that I look forward to, moving forward is a sense of accomplishment with folks. I don't know that, we're really completely there yet because we're still so busy bursting at the seams and and going through applications and going through new processes and constantly coming up with how do we manage this, that, or the other thing when the pandemic and the virus keeps us on our toes. But I think within FDA and across HHS and the federal government, at some point, there will be a collective reckoning, of what we've accomplished and how we've done it, what we've overcome. We get that little by little, but at some point, and who knows how far off we are from it, I really look forward to that, a reunion with people in real life, but also, just being able to take a few huge steps back and say, man, what have we done, right? What have we done as public health professionals, and what have we done as humans? And this is really incredible, and it's something to be celebrated. And of course, the unpacking of lessons learned has already happened. There are many different work groups. There are many different executive orders that have come out this year that have already charged us as civil servants in terms of looking at what has been done, what's been done well, what could be done better. And those are processes that I look forward to as well, because I think that's where, we really dig into some deep learning, and we really start thinking about, building a future that is going to be ready to handle whatever comes next. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you about some of the experiences that we've had within FDA and within the department. And I certainly look forward to working with all of the stakeholders to build that future, that better future. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Rachel Davison. I am the Quality and Regulatory Affairs Vice President in Beckman Coulter for the Clinical Chemistry and Immunoassay Business Unit. I'm very pleased to talk to you today and share with you some videos about members of my organization and coworkers who worked to produce serology and antigen assays for the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic. While the whole world was experiencing this shared sliding down Maslow's hierarchy of needs, worrying about our health and the safety of our families, about securing food, not being able to find masks, not being able to find toilet paper, those things were also happening to all of these amazing associates. But in addition to that, they decided that they were going to commit and throw their shoulder behind the healthcare needs of the world. And it was amazing to be able to bear witness to and participate in the development of these assays for Beckman Coulter. Beckman's mission statement is to work with every customer to deliver innovative, reliable, and efficient diagnostic solutions for patients across the globe. These associates that you're going to see in the next video clips are very humble. They are not going to tell you how long, how diligently and enthusiastically they personally worked, and also the many faces of people that we can't show you here in multiple geographies across the planet, working in every time zone, contributing simultaneously in a way for design and development that we have never been so successful achieving before, concurrent teams, many document reviews and risk assessments and concurrent design choices. And so I wish we could show you all of those people, because really the teams that we chose and the people who did this work were instrumental in our long-term success. I have 5-year-old twin daughters, and I imagine in the future when they're grown, they will ask, where were you during the COVID-19 pandemic? And that's something I think all of us will reflect on in our future, having just now started to pull through maybe some of the worst. And it will be a joy to tell them that I got to work alongside these clever people who were doing everything they could to apply their skills and experience to improve healthcare information for the people who needed it. And I can tell you personally, it was a beautiful thing to experience.
Hello, my name is Stephen Gaston, and I am Vice President for Reagent R&D at Beckman Coulter. Going back over 1 year ago, we made the decision as a company to enter the fight around the pandemic by developing and offering diagnostic tests to support the management of patients suffering from the SARS-CoV-2 virus. With the pandemic growing and with these tests being designated with the regulatory clearance path of emergency use authorization, we recognized the need for urgency to develop and launch the tests. Over the course of the last 12 months, we've developed and launched a total of 4 tests, including a number of serology tests and an antigen test. These tests were developed in weeks to months versus the normal timeline of years for tests of this complexity. For example, our SARS-CoV-2 IgG test was developed, manufactured and submitted for EUA in a record-breaking 7 weeks. So what were the key factors that helped us to achieve these milestones? Well, firstly, we had to identify a team of key scientists and project managers to work on the development, and to gain speed, we selected some of our most experienced developers and project managers. And we also had to build out the team with the other functions needed, such as QA, RA, manufacturing, clinicals, product management, and marketing, and we used similar thinking to select key people here. From an assay development perspective, we rapidly screened the literature, we identified key opinion leaders and sample sources for the work ahead as early as possible. The technical strategy to gain speed was to reuse in-house materials, designs and processes as much as possible, and by doing so, we were building in robustness to the products. Using the EUA guidance, we were able to streamline the essential testing and documentation required to verify and validate the products. We also took the opportunity to review key processes behind deliverables for the new test to reduce the time required. For example, we reduced the time to produce key parameter setting files for the test by 11-fold. Another area that required focus on speed was securing the necessary inventory of materials for manufacturing to meet customer demand. Our supply chain and manufacturing organizations work seamlessly with development to build the necessary scale into operations to ensure supply capacity. Using well-established processes as a design focus helped us to reduce risk and enable rapid scaling of processes in the manufacturing environment. Central to driving efficiency and bringing speed to the delivery of these products so quickly to the market was the use of the Danaher Business System, or DBS. The teams utilized many of the proprietary processes and tools to solve problems, remove waste, and find creative solutions while maintaining a high level of discipline around managing the key deliverables. Finally, one of the most important and key success factors in all of this is the people themselves. Our associates were highly motivated by the patient needs and saw the challenge as core to our mission as a healthcare company to provide diagnostic solution for the clinical needs of the patients. Many were touched personally by the pandemic, which only served to strengthen their resolve to put in the necessary and enormous effort to deliver on this company initiative and human need. The teamwork was outstanding across multiple functions and many geographical sites, with time zones being managed in a way that supported increased efficiency. All of this was also being performed in a more virtual working world than normal, where again the determination of the associates to meet the human need drove them to find creative ways to work around and use the virtual environment without slowing them down. While there's a commercial element to what we do, in this case it was very satisfying and rewarding for our associates, including those not involved in this program, to see how our company and our associates rallied together across all levels in the company to deliver solutions for patients during this pandemic, and to see how this links to our vision and mission as a healthcare company.
Every diagnostic company has a foundation for their quality management system that includes design controls. However, what we didn't have at Beckman Coulter was a playbook for accelerating development for assays that were needed during a global pandemic that would allow for flexibility and creativity in our development and product launch processes. Within a week of deciding we were going to develop these serology and antigen assays, we gathered our Q&R leaders and associates to outline a new fast-track quality system that would meet the FDA emergency use authorization requirements. We challenged ourselves to think differently and prioritize those minimum, most critical to quality elements that would ensure a safe and effective device, as well as a compliant design history file. We found new and innovative ways to document our risk management process. We minimized and combined documents, we cut out waste in our processes, and we delivered serology and antigen assays that continue our mission to advance healthcare for every person.
Hi, I'm Brian Johnson, Beckman Quality Development QA. Conventional wisdom would dictate that quality and speed come from opposing places. Haste makes waste. You only get out of it what you put into it. If you fail to prepare, you are preparing to fail. So how then do you ensure quality during rapid new product launch for the health pandemic? When the team for the SARS-CoV-2 project was initiated, we needed a way to define the minimum required quality elements needed to support emergency use authorization submission and commercial release. A plan was created to outline critical elements and methods for streamlining our current processes while remaining compliant to the required regulations. During the development of the COVID-19 products, the quality organization quickly fell back to first principles: relentless prioritization, constant alignment, and tireless collaboration. Additionally, each quality group, including validation QA, manufacturing QA, and development QA, successfully utilized standard work, best practices, and lessons learned from earlier successful projects to execute and coordinate the work. We soon learned that our greatest advantage was our ability to collaborate while retaining some space to challenge each other's ideas for ensuring quality and compliance. On top of this, we worked together to support one another when the documentation bottlenecks arose or design or risk management became intense. Additionally, quality leadership was close at hand, attending bi-weekly meetings, easing issue escalation, and providing plentiful alignment opportunities. This helped us not only to be successful in managing the timeline, but also to create a clear understanding for where we could take a risk and where we needed to hold the line for quality.
Hi, my name is Erikabladholm, and I work in the Clinical Affairs Department at Beckman Coulter. I was part of the COVID specimen acquisition team in 2020 through 2021, still am. And one of my responsibilities was to find the right samples as fast as possible with the right data, which you can imagine could be really challenging amongst a rapidly changing regulatory environment. Sometimes we would begin our sample acquisition process and learn later that a new guidance document from a regulatory agency would come out. We would have to shift quickly what we were doing. And then we were also characterizing these samples at the same time that we were acquiring them. So we were learning as we went and had to be very adaptive throughout that process. The leadership at Beckman Coulter really stepped in to help us out. We met with them 3 times a week, 7 a.m. meetings, to help them understand what samples we had, what the requirements were, what the gaps were, and what some of the challenges we were facing in finding the more rare specimens. And so they stepped in to leverage business partners, leverage cross-OPCO partners in helping us find new relationships with new researchers to help us pull in these rare and hard to find specimens amongst very high demand. All in all, I'm pretty impressed with what our company came up with during this time and the challenges that we overcame.
Hi everyone, I'm Rita Hoddy, a Senior Manager of Regulatory Affairs at Roche. I was the regulatory lead for the COVID-19 molecular assays on our high throughput systems and the one working with FDA representing Roche over the past year. My experience working with FDA has always been a positive one, so this wasn't really any different. Once the virus sequence was published and we received the pre-EUA template from FDA, we then began developing the assay and completing the pre-EUA template for submission to FDA. This included the assay design and performance studies that would be needed for the EUA. We were able to pull this together within a couple weeks, And this took a lot of coordinating within our project team and externally, but we have a brilliant team of scientists and project team members working together to get this done within such a short time. Once I submitted the pre-EUA to FDA, this began our journey of the discussions on the data to support our request for the EUA. This, of course, also meant that my husband had to take on many more responsibilities around the house and with the kids in order for me to focus on this very important project. We were able to submit our first COVID assay for EUA on March 11th, and we received the FDA authorization the following day. So this now meant that patients would have access to more tests that can help them better understand their symptoms during such an uncertain time. Over the past year, there have been several additions to our original assay in order to meet the global needs of the pandemic. We added nasal swab testing, pool sample testing, and asymptomatic screening. We've also launched an antibody test, an antigen test, and a point of care test. So we've been pretty busy over the past year. We really appreciate the regulatory agility shown during this unprecedented time, and it would be great if we can apply some of the learnings and carry them over on past the pandemic. We see that there could be some value in doing that. I really feel very honored and proud to work for a company like Roche that really knows the importance of putting patients first and has the infrastructure to develop and supply so many tests within such a short time. I'm so grateful for my leadership team within regulatory and the talented individuals who I worked so closely with over the past year. This was a rare time when our work lives collided with our personal lives, so we were all always very focused on the why and why we were doing what we were doing at work. We're all experiencing this virus, this pandemic, in one way or another, and we were given the opportunity to make a difference. And with that in mind, we were able to develop these tests and hopefully help out, with the situation we were all facing. Thank you.
In closing, I would like to thank each of our volunteers for sharing their stories and the powerful impact and difference they have all these volunteers have made, but more importantly, their teams that they recognize and other teams that you did not hear about who have helped us to safely move forward through this pandemic.